Good afternoon to everyone in China and good morning to everyone in Europe. This is Bonamizan from the EU SME Center, one of the market access advisors, and I'd like to welcome you again to the EU SME Center webinar series. Welcome back for all the ones that have kept strong these holidays and still available for today's webinar. We'll be continuing the webinar series during this summer, but at a slightly quieter pace as we've done during the year to continue planning for future events, and we'll come back early during the year with a full-fledged agenda for our webinars again. Very quickly, for those again that haven't used the webinar platform in the past, you should see now the different functions that you have available to yourself with the webinar platform, the webinar panel. You have a number of different options and functions available. One of them is the question box, and the chat box, as whenever you have any questions or elements you'd like to be featured in the Q&A session of today's webinar, please pass them on through that tool, and we'll be answering as many of your questions as we can today during this webinar. Again, as usual, we've got quite a number of participants in today's webinar, so it will probably not be possible to cover all the questions that will be raised, but we'll make sure to get back to you, and of course we'll also encourage you to use the web platform to raise any additional question you will have directly through our website on eusmecenter.org.cn. As you know, and if you don't, again, the EU SME Center is an initiative funded by the European Union to support and assist European SMEs in their approach to the Chinese market by offering free confidential information and advice, amongst other tools that we are developing. We do that in 4 different main areas of expertise, including business development, legal issues, standardization and conformity assessment, as well as on HR management in China. All services available from the EU SME Center are free of charge, and you can find a summary of all of those on our website. I'd like to remind you again of one of the tools that we have available. We've developed a few months ago a diagnostic kit, which is very much a self-assessment questionnaire to assess your readiness to the Chinese market. You can find that directly on our homepage, and it's a questionnaire that will only require about 10 minutes of your time, but which might help you to raise a number of, well, it's operating like a checklist to help you to help yourself develop your skills in some of the areas that you might not necessarily think of as you're developing your China strategy. We've had a lot of visitors and a lot of positive comment about the diagnostic kit, so I can only encourage you to visit that tool on our website and take benefit from it. So lots of different tools that we've developed in the past, and one of the most successful one indeed is the EU SME Center webinar series. We've been covering plenty of topics over the last year, and today this webinar, which will address how opportunities can outweigh challenges in China's water sector, will be covering one of the topics that we have received a number of requests on in the past couple of years. And for this, we have our expert Simon Spooner, who is joining us from Atkin and is based in Beijing, to cover this topic and share with us the experience and the experience he's gathered in that area. Simon, welcome to the webinar series. Maybe what I'd like to do is to invite you to give a brief overview of your background. You've been extensively active in that sector in China through a number of projects. Well, with this, I'd like to welcome you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and to carry on with your presentation.
Great, thank you, Benai, and good afternoon, good morning to everybody who's involved in this webinar. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I hope to be able to give you a little bit more information on opportunities in the water sector in China. First of all, just a little bit about myself. I could be up on the screen with you. Well, I'd say, first of all, apologies, I'm actually in the UK at the moment, though based in China. So I am coming in through the web conferencing system there, so I hope the quality of the voice is okay. Anyway, to introduce myself, I've been working in the water sector in the UK and China for more than 20 years. Much of the last 5 years I was working on the EU China River Basin Management Programme for the EU delegation, and that involved being based inside the Ministry of Water Resources in the Yellow River Commission, and also working a lot with the Environment Protection Ministry. Before that, I'd also worked on many World Bank projects and other sort of international aid projects in China. And then for the last year, I've been based in Beijing with Atkins, developing our business here. And I'm currently the chair of the European Chamber Water Working Group and leading the China-Europe Water Platform business pillar, which is about building business cooperation between European companies and Chinese enterprises as the water investment programs here progress. I also have a number of academic links with Cambridge University, Nottingham Ningbo in China, Tsinghua, and other universities which I do some research and lecturing. Okay, to introduce today's program, what I want to do is give a general introduction just to the China water sector, what the main situation of it is and how it's regulated and the sort of governance of it, and then to discuss the sort of investment programs that are going on to get a scale of what's happening, and where different areas of the government are putting money in and the sort of quantities that are happening and what the opportunities may be there. Then I'll try and look a bit at how do you get into that, what are the sort of processes for procurement, and then with that some of the challenges that are there, some of the issues that you face in terms of getting involved, and some of the risks such as IPR protection. Then we can look at some of the opportunities that there may be for small, medium enterprises. And to me, there's sort of two main areas, being whether you're an equipment seller with actual kit, or whether you're services and consultancy and knowledge, or like myself, maybe a bit of a combination of both. And we can have a little look at some of the key market areas. I list some there. I won't go into too much detail about all of them, otherwise we'll be here all day. And I should also mention a bit about the China-Europe Water Platform, which I'm working with, which also helps provide a framework of support to European business in China. And then we'll also give some examples from some companies that have come in. So, to discuss the sort of regulation structure, the first thing to understand is that China has a different way of doing things. It's unique and distinctive. But the water is becoming increasingly important in China. It really has gone up the political agenda in the last few years. And serious money is getting spent on addressing it, because water scarcity and pollution are a real problem in China, and environmental conditions generally are getting a higher profile, also with all issues with air pollution. But water is critical to development, and China really is running into the buffers on that, on both industrial and urban development, and has to transform the agricultural sector as well to provide enough water for everything. The organisation of water in China is pretty complex. It's traditional here to talk laughingly of the 9 dragons who are in charge of water and how they battle between each other for control. To me, it looks more like there's at least 20 of them, and they're all got their fingers in some part of it. So I'll try and explain that a little bit. And as I say, there's a big investment and reform program underway, which will probably intensify over the 12th and 13th 5-year plan periods. But you have to face a basic fact of water is common throughout the world, that it's really the vital resource which is undervalued, and the prices are rather low, and that limits some of what can be done commercially, though there are plans to raise that up now. Okay, what I've put up now is maybe a rather complicated diagram. I won't go into all the detail of it, but this is just to show some of these 9 or 20 dragons and who's involved in water resources management, water management. Extensively, resources come under the management of the Ministry of Water Resources, and then quality is with the Environmental Protection Ministry. There's a lot of overlap there. Urban water, water supply, wastewater treatment is more under the Ministry of Housing, Urban, Rural Construction, and then other aspects sort of fall under a number of technical ministries thereafter. And then lower down, very important, appears the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, who are vital for all planning of capital investment throughout the Chinese economy, and all the major investments have to go through their approval. And all the operational budgets have to go through Ministry of Finance approval, and also all the fees and levies. Between these two, they also have control over pricing, which makes life quite difficult for the other ministries who are actually trying to manage water, but it's somebody else who has the ultimate say on the finance. And then all of this has to come under State Council and MPC overview. Just to make this a little more complex, it also sits at different levels throughout the country. So like everything else, you have the sort of central state ministerial level, and then there are provincial levels, prefectures, counties, townships. And it's useful to understand some of the influencing factors to this, because at each level you have scientific and design institutes and academies who are providing the sort of technical advice. You also have the double management system, by which at each level they're technically managed by the sort of ministerial line above, but financially by the local government levels. So there can be a bit of a conflict between the policy they're given and the sort of financial control they're given. And then, of course, at all levels, the CPC are also managing a lot of the appointments and HR and various policy issues. That's set out there just for the Ministry of Water Resources. Look at that more for all of the overall water management across all of the different ministries. This sort of shows how the different ones fit at different levels, at the central, the provincial, sort of municipal, prefecture level, and then at local levels. And there are slight differences between the different ministries that are there. So just to zoom in a little bit here, so you can see that you have the different central ministries, and then running down to their respective organisations at lower levels. So this is just really typical structure of government. In water, there are rather a lot of these involved compared to some other sectors. Okay, at this point, maybe we could hold our first poll. to get some indication of your sort of interest in the water sector. So if Benno will take over at this point. Yeah. Okay.
Simon, yeah, you can see that now the polls are appearing. So here you've got the main sector of operations and interest in China. So as you can see on the question, what is your main sector of operation? A, water resources, land hydropower, flood river and basin management. 2 is urban, such as water supply, sewage, drainage. C, industrial, hence process and cooling water, as well as wastewater treatment. D, agricultural, including irrigation technologies, watershed management, etc., or other, or not currently involved in the water sector. So I'm seeing that most of you have already answered to the poll. With this, I'm closing and sharing the results with you. So Simon, you can see about about 1/3 of the participants are involved in these industrial operations. About 1/3 is not yet or not currently involved in the water sector or in other sectors. Is this a little bit the experience you have yourself when it comes to opportunities on the market, or are there maybe some of the opportunities which are not used to the right level here? It would be useful to have your comments and views here.
Okay. I can't actually see the results on my system here. But yeah, I mean, that would seem sort of what I'd expect, sort of a 1/3, 1/3 split. Because I think the industrial market in some ways is an easier one to enter than the municipal and water resources one. So maybe I may discuss some of those points as we move ahead.
Very good. Well, I'm closing and hiding the poll here, and I'm leaving, carrying on with your presentation, Simon.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Benno. The water sector. If you look at what the main drivers are. Some of the big items are the water resources investment program. This is a very large multi-trillion RMB program to ensure water security, and there are major programs for water quality and pollution management as well under the Ministry for Environmental Protection. And there's also sort of large investment programs in the urban sector for urban water, and I'll go on to describe some of these in more detail. The provinces also have their own agendas and local drivers, and then the other sectors are also industrial water projects, which are increasing as the standards and requirements get tighter and water scarcity bites, and if water prices go up, so you'll get increasing interest in managing water better in industry. And agricultural water management is critical because that's the main water user, still using about 60 to 70% of all the water. So if there's going to be savings and to get more water, it actually has to come by reducing agricultural water management, water use, by having more efficient irrigation. So there is this program of water resource investment. In 2012, looking back, some 430 million RMB, so more than 40, nearly 50 billion euros was spent in this sector alone on projects. These are to do with the general sort of macro water situations, the rivers, the reservoirs, the lakes, the dams, the big flood protection schemes, soil conservation and management, and also major hydropower development, and the sort of, on water supply, it's the sort of water resources infrastructure, the providing of the reservoirs and the raw water source rather than the urban supply. And of this, the funding came, say, about 160 billion from central government, 260 billion from local government at provincial level, who have come up with most of that. And the central government funding tends to focus particularly on those projects which have limited commercial return. This programme there also set out in the #1 policy document of 2011, which also set out the funding sources for this, of which there are a number, the most significant being land transfer fees, a levy on all land sales, to actually fund this scale of programme. Some other government programmes that are of interest to people are the 948 Technology Import Programme. This is quite important because it makes available funds to government departments and institutes and universities for buying overseas technologies, and they can get grants to invest in international best technology. The catch is that they want to buy kit rather than consultancy and knowledge, and quite often they incline to mistake the importance of the accompanying knowledge, make it quite difficult to do sometimes. But there are substantial and increasing sums available for that if you talk to the right people in the departments. There's also then the MEP investment programme for the 12th five-year plan. This is also very substantial, with about 350 billion renminbi over the next 5 years. So this slide just sets out a bit of the scale of that and what that's focusing on. So this is on urban wastewater, drinking water source protection. There's some help control livestock pollution prevention. Then there's sort of large regional multi-use or comprehensive projects which do lots of things in an integrated fashion, and then also funding for industrial pollution control as government funding. And this sort of indicates both the number of planned projects over the next 5 years and the scale of the funding which is set aside for that. It's important, this program of MEPs is focused on a number of key river basins and areas. And this next graph here, this sort of sets out just the lakes and the river basins in China that this is focused on, and then sort of links the number of projects with the scale of funding which they had in 2012. And also you can see how that has increased since 2005 to get some idea of the growth in this market. Okay, so with all of these sort of big investment programs and things, I'm going to say a little bit about the project bidding process and some of the issues related to that that may be relevant for you as foreign companies. The basic situation is set out in the catalogue for guidance on foreign investment industries of the State Council. This was updated in January 2012 and classifies water and wastewater as encouraged for foreign involvement. This is important because it means that they're supposed to increase foreign involvement in it, and they're not to put up special barriers as they do in some other sectors. And however, economic conditions have been a bit more difficult than they were forecast. So it has been quite competitive in this sector in recent months, and that there is some sort of saturation of the market, despite the size as far as what is available to foreign companies, and the local businesses are getting much more and more adept. It's not an easy market to enter by any means. So for example, in desalination, which is watched very closely, and there's a big program to increase desalination to, I think it's about 2.2 million cubic meters a day by 2015. And there's been quite a lot of international interest coming into that, but not that many successful projects, and already they're pushing to have more and more local content to the project and to limit the ability of international firms to just come in and deliver turnkey solutions. But also the municipal water market says becoming much tighter with the local contractors and multi-purpose organisations now competing more effectively and at more comparable quality with international players such as Veolia or Suez and such like. Also, a lot of the projects now are coming in which are a lot smaller. So all of this, as the urban water infrastructure is expanded, so it's already present in the big cities and it's moving to smaller and smaller cities. So there are lots and lots more and more smaller projects, smaller plants, which are operating at local levels and more difficult for an international company to get involved in. So sort of network of contacts required to access this are considerable. And the local design institutes are inclined to have these sort of contacts at all the different levels. As I mentioned before, these exist at all the levels from central, provincial and local. And they're very involved in drawing up the bidding lists and procurement terms and things. And when it comes to the evaluation of the bids, they are fiercely price competitive. So you're going to have 40 to 60% of the scoring on price as opposed to quality. You know, compared to typical international projects, it will be 80% quality and 20% price. So you do need to be quite aggressive. Then just now to summarise a bit of the process by which these big projects are let. Basically, you have the strategy set out in the policy by the central government, and then projects which fit to that overall policy are prepared by local government. So they'll say, oh, we want to build a reservoir here, or we want to upgrade this dam, or we want to put in flood along these 10 kilometres, flood embankment along this 10 kilometres of the river. They prepare lists of these, having done their own basic feasibilities, and then pass that up to the central ministry. They then look at all these different proposed projects and do more detailed feasibility studies, and then pass lists up for approval for proceeding. It has to go through both the Water Ministry and then also the Development and Reform Commission. And if these are major infrastructure projects, they have to be ensured they fit in with the overall national infrastructure policies. Then back down to the provinces goes a list of those projects which are actually approved to go ahead, and then the province can start its commercial bidding process on those, but it's also going to have to look at how much money it's now actually got available and which ones it's actually going to take forward. And it's towards the end of this process that you need to be getting involved to know what the projects are that are coming up. Because by the time they're actually published in the bidding process, it's probably too late to really get a foothold. So there's a delicate balance of not wanting to start too early with projects that can't happen, and also not leaving it too late. And you need to have the contacts both at central and at local levels to achieve that kind of penetration. When it comes to project execution, of course, there are some significant problems typical of China that once you've actually got your contract signed up, you win the whole process and pricing, and you think now you know what you're doing. Of course, in China, that's just the start, and all sorts of things can change from there on, with rates, tariffs, and payment terms, and all sorts of things start to get renegotiated all the way through the process. And that can be against you. It can also be in your favour, since that can be a chance to get additional funding. And quite a lot of the local players will bid very, very low, knowing that they know how to then get things up a bit later. So it's not all bad. At the moment, getting foreign involvement in something like the water resources or urban water, the basic stuff they know how to do very effectively. So as a foreign company, you've got to be coming in offering something special technologies, the ability to do it much better, or the willingness to take on really complex or higher risk projects which maybe they don't want to do locally and get sort of stuck with. So they need that expertise. Supply chains tend to be, say, very price sensitive and unstable. So your partnering relationships are quite important to be able to get into these. And you have this difficult balance between needing to spend a lot of time to build relationships in order to be able to get in, but also be aware that in Europe, once you've kind of built that good relationship with your suppliers and partners, you tend to stick with it. In China, these things do shift around a lot more, and there can be very sudden changes and drops and people coming and going in a bit of an alarming way. So that is a little bit different. But building the relationships is vital to seeing you through that and keeping some kind of steadiness. So at this point we have a second poll, which is to gauge whether you've had experience of the tendering process in China. So maybe I'll hand over to Benno to introduce that.
Yes, thank you, Simon. So I'm sharing with this the next poll, which is really about what's your experience in tendering. And Simon, you've talked about the budgets which are available in different programs, and different programs will be interesting now to see as the poll is going through what will be the feedback we're getting from the audience as to their experience and whether they've been successful in their bidding process. I'm getting some answers. I'm leaving a few more seconds to get more answers, but the answers don't look so successful so far. All right. Well, I'm closing the poll and sharing the results now. So 90% of the people in the audience have never tendered in such programs, whereas 10% have, and mostly successful, and no company answered that they had unsuccessful experiences. That seems to be out of line with experiences I've heard before. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of participants that have not bid in the past, but for the rest we've got a majority that have answered that they have been successful. Is that the experience you've had so far, and what is typically, in your case, the cases where there's been successful or unsuccessful participation to tendering processes, Simon?
Yeah, I think that those are surprising results to be entirely on the successful. Certainly, my experience has been maybe we had a similar sort of success rate than that we would aim for in Europe as well, which is to win about a third of what we go for. You know, and normally you're competing against about 5 people on a list, and you get a third of them, then you're doing fairly well. And I think we do manage about that. There is an awful lot more, certainly for Atkins business, a lot of that's related to urban development and planning, and an enormous amount of that goes on contacts at local level. And you really have got to know that you're almost certainly going to win the thing before you go in and actually prepare the bid. Otherwise, sometimes you know you're just making up the numbers, and you kind of just put one in to maintain local contacts, but don't put too much effort into it. So sometimes the failure is known in advance as well. You just have to do that to make up numbers. But yeah, I think we've not bid any of these major local water investment program projects yet. So that's something I'm preparing for.
Okay, but with this I'm hiding
I will,
and carry on with the presentation then.
Yeah, okay. So I was just wanting to then go into some of the supply chain issues and other factors to consider. One is that you need to have regional distributors, whatever, to help you with the sales. That can work incredibly well. You can get really good relationships, very good, competent people. There can also be a lot of nasty surprises there, where your distributor starts working with other manufacturers and ends up distributing copies of your produce. And so IPR protection there is a huge concern, and you do have to be strategic about that. You kind of have to assume that anything that goes into China almost certainly will leak or get copied. So you've got to make sure it's either very, very difficult for it to be copied, or you keep all sort of design or details outside of China, even if you have manufacturing there, or vital elements of it, software elements and things, just stay external or very securely locked up and encrypted. So there are difficulties. In the past, there have been cases of things getting seized in customs and copied. I'm not sure if that's still going on, but there are all sorts of difficulties there. Nonetheless, I think the IPR is strengthening, but I think you can also say more about the advice that and support that the SME Centre can offer here.
Yes, Simon. Well, actually, as participants know, the centre is offering a wide range of services on all elements on their approach to the Chinese market, but we don't cover IP specifically ourselves because there is a separate initiative which is supporting European SMEs on IP questions in China. That's the China IPR SME Help Desk, and you can find the link to their website directly on the EU SME Centre website, and they do help SMEs in identifying what and how they have to develop an IP strategy in China, looking at IP, for instance, on technology transfer, looking at IP in public procurement questions, which is certainly relevant on this particular sector.
Okay. Another issue I should mention as well is it can often be very difficult in the water sector to get hold of data, which is vital to many project planning or project execution, because all of the almost all useful water resources data is classified as of national secrecy importance, and they won't give it to you. And all the planning is also classified. So if you're engaged to, as I was for many years, to do water quality modeling based on data to support their water quality or river basin plan, you have to do that with no data and not allowed to see the plan, which does make for some creative solutions. Anyway, I'll tell a bit now about where the market is going and future trends. I think this is where there is, it's the old story with China, massive opportunity, huge market, growing very fast. How do you get in? The key driver is urbanization. So over the next decade, another 200 million people are going to move from the countryside to the cities and the towns, and will be needing 21st century level of water and sanitary infrastructure. So there's a lot got to be built there. Industrial production obviously is going to increase massively, and the pressure on it to be for better water efficiency and environmental performance means that they are going to have to tidy up their act. They're going to have to invest in cleaner technologies and treatment processes. So there's definitely demand. There's also, as I mentioned before, the fact that the market is changing a bit from focused on the really big cities, which now have a lot of infrastructure, into the smaller cities, where you need slightly different solutions. You need to look a bit more at decentralized wastewater and recycling. And this, I think, is a trend where there's quite a bit of potential for the European companies to come in, looking at the whole water infrastructure in a slightly different way, about how you can reuse the water at a local level. You can reduce water use by at least a third with good integrated solutions for that, and also for integrating that a bit with more sustainable drainage solutions and pipe production. Another sort of growth area is sludge treatment. With all the investment in wastewater treatment, it seems very often to come as a surprise that there's left over the sludge at the end of it, the solid matter that you've cleaned out. They often haven't got a good plan of what to do with this, so there is a great need for more investment in that area, and it is technically quite challenging, and it's also very unpopular because it's a bit unpleasant. Another big trend to understand is the new government's headline feature of ecological civilization. So ecological civilization and beautiful China is this sort of concept of trying to move development to a more sustainable level and building cities that people are actually going to live in and restoring the health of the environment and the ecology. And there is a big transformation now in actually trying to understand things in an ecological manner, looking at the biology and the ecosystem of the rivers, which was never done before, and now comprehensively monitoring and using that as a driver in the planning system, just as we do in Europe. They've really taken quite a lot from the Water Framework Directive there in terms of doing that. It also influences the whole sort of urban planning approaches and are much more landscape driven. And this can open all sorts of ways in terms of selling both planning and also design services. And just to go through some of these growth trends, looking at the projected utility capital investment. In here we can see this is just for the urban utilities on the very substantial projected growth year on year of capital expenditure in all areas. Water resources here is just the urban water resource infrastructure, desalination and the like, not so much the main water resource program. So that sort of wider resource program is twice that total again to be spent on that. There's a very large amount. As you saw there also, sorry, taking back towards sludge treatment is gradually increasing there as well. Let me move on. Then to try and identify what are the areas which are easiest for smaller companies to come in, which are more the equipment and supply side. There is a $15 billion market around now, and also that is greatly growing. The operational expenditure is also greatly increasing, due to increase over the coming years, and opening many opportunities for efficiency and better planning systems. And you can compare this also with the machinery market side that was previously reported from the SME Centre. And this diagram is a little complex, but there's all these different circles and things with the links. It's trying to break down that utility market and the industrial market to see how you get to the sort of equipment market scale and what those are. And I've also, I'll issue a final report in which we also have the projections for each of these areas up to 2018. One note to see is just looking at the overall size of this water utility market in China is 10 times that in India at present. So it really is probably one of the largest in the world at the moment, and you need to think about how to get into it. These slides now are just helping to see a bit more about how that breaks down, starting from the totals, seeing how much is industrial and utility, and then how that capital breakdown goes to different sort of equipment areas, both in the different areas of water resources, wastewater, sludge, that sort of thing, and then how the equipment for those breaks into other major areas, sort of screening, membranes, sludge management, all these different sectors to get some idea of the size of them. And although some may be small, they can also be the areas maybe with the best opportunities, some of the newer areas such as membranes and sludge management, that there's still an opening to new technologies and potential for growth and for partnering, which is going to go rapidly forward. Okay, it's time for the third final poll, which is on your current presence in China.
Thank you, Simon. And I mean, just maybe a brief comment on what you said earlier. I mean, obviously we're seeing the opportunities that are arising in specific sectors, and you mentioned also it's sometimes also niche markets and very specific products and technologies we're speaking about, and this in particular is relevant for European SMEs so that they can position themselves on the market. But with this, I'm then launching the last poll on what's your stage of development on the Chinese market before we carry on with the next part of the presentation. So, A, are you established a business in China and you're trading or manufacturing? B, you've got a regular international sales to China. C, only occasional ones. D, you're looking to sell products. Or D, you're sourcing components or products on the Chinese market. I'm giving you a little bit more time to participate to the poll. We've got 1/3 of companies that participate. I understand also that maybe some of you are not currently, maybe not involved on the Chinese market yet and only interested to see how to start your operations. So with this, I'm closing the poll, and we've got 60%, Simon, of the participants which didn't answer, which I understand that they don't have operations on the Chinese market. But looking at the other areas, we've got roughly, well, we've got 30%, or maybe in the right order, we've got 36% looking to sell products in China, 29% which have established businesses in China, so that's quite an interesting number. That's quite in that sector, so trading or manufacturing here. And as the third, 20% which have regular sales on the Chinese market. Is that typically, is that representative of what of the companies you're in contact with in that sector? Do you think that's, I mean, for companies which are selling here but which don't have a presence, do you think that it's typically a good recommendation for them to be more strongly established on the market? What do you think here?
Yeah, I think you have to have some presence here, local representative, and also in many of the areas, in order to involve into the larger tendering processes, you have to have some capital presence in China. If not, you can only come in as a sort of partner to somebody else who is leading. So it really depends on the scale at which you're coming in. And I think this is something which we want to look at more with the China-Europe Water Platform, as we try and build more relations with the major Chinese enterprises involved in this market, and then how they can work with European companies to make it a bit more straightforward to come in, so you're not having to start everything from scratch yourself and build these relations, but so that there can be a bit more sort of ready indication there.
Okay, well, I'm hiding the polls now, and if we can move on to the next part. And
okay, I'll just run through some of the sort of areas of opportunity that are there. We mentioned before in the water resources, they're really focusing on dams, dikes, flood safety and things. I don't think there's a lot of prospect of small European companies helping to build 100 kilometers of dikes in China. That's going to be done by the local guys. It's not very high tech. But some of the sort of risk management approaches, monitoring, and maybe in areas special grouting systems or membrane, geotextile membrane systems and the like. There are specialist areas where one can find a way in here. Likewise in micro hydro and small hydro schemes in terms of finding ways and experience. I think there are opportunities there. The big scale hydro, of course, Three Gorges Dam type stuff, the Chinese are doing this way ahead of anybody else in the world on a bigger scale. And so I think they kind of know how to do that where we're not doing it now. But still in all these things there's room for specialist control systems, there's room for computer modelling, strategic planning. And then on the agricultural sort of wider side, in soil conservation, water saving, irrigation, there may be some prospect for inputs there. I think soil conservation, again, is fairly low tech, it's quite hard to see how we get in. Water saving, irrigation, if there are technologies, drip irrigation, greenhousing, that sort of thing, there's been quite a few successes there. And then again, the ecological restoration starts to open a way for specialisms. There may be, at the moment, in expertise as well now in terms of understanding how that's done. In urban water, I think traditionally the way in has been together with big foreign lead companies as a supplier to Veolia, Suez and others. They are more tending to use local companies as well here, which is making that a bit more difficult. That market has become a lot slower. However, the industrial process water market, as I say, that is growing very rapidly. There's a lot of pressure to increase that. So the challenge there is in terms of building the network of contact, but with a lot of great requirements for recycling and cleaner production. There should be potential there. In the water networks, urban water networks, I think specialist services in pressure management, leakage management, modelling and distribution planning and flood management, these all are areas where one can get in. And again, another of these routes is about combining this with the whole urban development process and urbanization planning and how to create sort of livable, low-carbon, green cities. Mentioned for industrial water, there is a demand and a market for EPC contracting of treatment processes, but this can be quite difficult for a European company to manage the risk on. And for larger companies, certainly for Atkins, and I know for some of the other major consultancies, we know that we could do this in China, we could make a big market, but our directors don't want to know about the risks involved. So for a company that is able to take on that and come up with the right business model and risk management, there's a lot of potential there. But it does require a very specialist and experienced way forward. And you will have quite a clean run because a lot of the big European players, as I say, can't go for that for various business reasons. And as I've mentioned also, desalination. Desalination is actually far more used in industrial water than it is in domestic water, and still many of the desal plants along the east coast are actually supplying cooling water and industrial water, process water, rather than city water. So this is still a big area. Another area with the development of shale gas in China, this has huge water demands. It's one of the limits on this taking off so far. So far, there's very little happening here, but there is great interest. There is a problem that Chinese regulation currently prevents reinjection of waste water, which is the way that it's normally disposed of in the US, where this is developed. So there is a demand for appropriate and compliant water treatment processes. It's a demand which is proving very difficult to meet. Certainly I looked at this a while ago. I thought our company, we do shale gas management in the US. We can bring the technology across. Actually, it proved to be a little difficult to do. So there's potential there if somebody knows what they're doing. And likewise in the mining, the coal mining, mineral mining, water management there, equipment supplies. If you've got stuff which can be used in urban water or is developed elsewhere, there's actually a big market there as well if you can make the right contact. I'll make some quick examples here of some companies that have been working in this sector that I know of. One is Microland from the Netherlands. This company sells water quality monitoring systems based on toxicology of luminescent bacteria. So it's quite a unique technology. They've been going for, they set up in about 2004 in Europe and then entered China about 5 years ago, where they have a local representative who helps them out in it. Their manufacturing is still all in the EU, so they're selling, and they're selling into the water utility market and also local government, especially environmental protection bureaus, but also a bit to, they've sold some also to Yellow River Commission and to the Water Resource Protection Bureaus and some of the local utilities in that area. So as an example, they are able to charge a much higher price for their equipment in China than they can in Europe because there wasn't, they have an open market there wasn't any competition, and also the Chinese are willing to pay for the equipment, but with that you also have to provide training and support, and where before you would sort of aim maybe a separate consultancy sort of contract that goes with equipment, really you have to roll all of that into the purchase price. The Chinese government wants to buy a bit of kit and they want it all to work, and then when it doesn't work they want to come back to you and for you to sort it out for free. So that free has to be factored into your sale price right at the beginning, at a high price, so that you can actually support the customer and cover the the higher costs of initial marketing there. The big danger is that your local competitors learn about what you're doing, and so you start finding a lot of similar products appearing and squeezing your market share a bit. The hope can be that the market is growing fast enough that even with this going on, there's still more and more for you to do. So it's not always a disaster, because sometimes the difficulty can be that you have to create a market which then grows, which people don't know about, not always about just getting share.
Simon,
a second example, and this
as we are a little bit over time, my suggestion would go that we're skipping the next case, which is available on our website, and we go maybe directly to the water platform and the conclusions, if you agree.
Yep, very pleased to do that. So to introduce the China Europe Water Platform, this is the latest agreement between Europe and China, signed up by all the great and the good. It has three main areas, which is policy and governance exchange, research coordination and business opportunities. So the policy is mostly looking at helping in the practicality of how they implement their water reform ideas, learning from how we've done that in Europe with the Water Framework Directive. Research coordination is about trying to fit the European 2020 Horizon programme that's starting together with the internal programmes of Ministry of Water Resources and MEP. They have lots of money coming down for research projects, but with the new relationships, each side, like the Chinese can fund the Chinese side, the Europeans can fund the European side. You want to do a project together, you've somehow got to coordinate those programs. And then business opportunities is what we're doing here. It's about understanding the market and helping to get matchmaking and relations with the enterprises. Okay. Now, as a part of that, we're also carrying out an online survey, which is a little bit, some of it similar to the poll questions we asked earlier, but a little bit more detailed and structured. And it would be very good if you could undertake that survey. So this is the first time I'm publicising this to you, and the link is there. It's not too long, don't worry, it's 10 questions or so. And that's sponsored by the China Europe Water Platform, the European Chamber, and also the SME Centre. So I hope you'll be able to do that. Also, just to notify of upcoming events, these are some of the major things which are coming in the water sector over the next year. This, I think I won't go into these in detail now, but you can refer to this and get the links. I'll also try and add a few other things which are related to the China Europe Water Platform once we have the dates for those set out. We'll also have events around the EU-China Summit, which will be in mid-November. Okay, so just to summarise the main points there, water security is actually critical in China. It's recognised at the highest level, both for quantity and quality, and there is a massive increase in investment in the sector to address this problem. They want to get the best international expertise. It's not always easy to do that, and one can come unstuck. One can also do very well, and there are, very good businesses to be made here. It's quite complicated to understand the whole procurement procedures, how foreign companies can actually get involved and undertake these negotiations, and we are working to try to provide more information and clarity to that through the water platform. Because some of these markets now are getting mature, and the biggest areas of them are not really open to foreign companies. They have to spot those niches, the right places. You've got to really have some expertise and something special to sell. When you do have something special to sell, the Chinese will buy it, and they are willing to pay good prices for them if you can sell it and negotiate it in the right way. There is the opportunity there. So basically, I think now as we go to some questions and answers, is to work out do the opportunities outweigh these challenges, and is the water market a sensible area to be focusing your efforts. So with that, I hand back to Benno to manage the next session.
Thank you, Simon. I think you've been sharing extensive insights here on your experience on the water sector, and we've gone a bit over time, so I don't think we've got much time for questions, but I'd like to raise one question which has come several times through this webinar, and they're really about what are the risks for SMEs when they're starting collaboration with in China with local players, and speaking here specifically of domestic companies, larger or smaller. For instance, in sectors where they have to go through joint venture agreements, are these what are the risks in these cases, and what would be your recommendation when on points that they have to pay particular attention to in the negotiation process with these companies?
Okay, well, first of all, I can relate a limited experience in this, but the one I do have, I think I might have just dropped out. I don't know whether I can still be heard.
You're still there, Simon. We can still hear you.
Okay, I am still there. Okay, sorry, I got a funny message. Okay, my experience in this was with previous a consultancy company that I was with, and then about 10 years ago established a joint venture with a design institute in Beijing, aiming, this was to be our way of moving from the international funded sort of World Bank, Asian Development Bank market into the local market and project. I'd have to say it was not successful in that it was very difficult to get any real understanding of how this was going to work. And ultimately it seemed that the Chinese partner regarded the international one as a nice big cash source, and the international thought, oh well, once we're in with them we'll have all the local contacts and we'll get access to the market. It didn't work very well and proved to be long and expensive business, finally terminated. In my current company, we don't have any joint ventures locally in China. We've avoided that. That's not to say we're not looking at it and considering it, but it's something you have to be very, very careful about because of differences in culture and management and organisation. However, there are certain sectors, I know, where you have to have joint ventures for manufacturing, production, different areas you're required to, and you have to go into that. For those, I think probably the SME Centre can give better advice than I can specifically. I know they have prepared some very good information on this.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And indeed, as you said, when it comes to the horizontal approach on opening operations here in China, we certainly have quite a volume of information and advice, and I'd like again to encourage participants to the webinar to raise any questions and additional questions they'd have directly through our website, through usmecenter.org.cn. There is short registration process, but after which you can have access to the Ask the Expert function where you can raise any question you would have. Simon, you're also in parallel working for a report on the water sector for the EU SME Center, so hopefully this this is well in progress, and hopefully we will be distributing that to all participants on through the website in the next coming weeks/months. So with this, I'd like to thank you, Simon, for your time and for sharing your insight on the water sector and your experience on the water sector in China. And I'd like to thank also our audience of today for their active contribution in the webinar. I apologize for not having the time to go through all the questions that we've had, but we'll try to get to you separately. Also, I'd like, well, as we're finishing a little bit as we're entering the summer season, to thank Anita for all the support for the past 30 webinars in this webinar series that we've launched about a year ago. We'll be a little bit less visible on the webinar series in the next few weeks, but we'll be back with new webinars on new sectors and horizontal issues that SMEs are facing on their approach to the Chinese market. And again, thank you for also taking a couple of minutes of your time to go through the short survey that will follow the webinar so that we can have your feedback and continue to improve the webinar platform. So Simon, Anita, and to the audience, thank you again for today's webinar, and see you soon again for next webinar on our platform. Thank you.